Your
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the Sports Card Therapist and Sports Card Lessons collab podcast episode. I'm Rob. That's Ken. Hope you guys are doing well. Ken, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing well. Glad to be back on the microphone. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been on, so happy to get back and happy to be doing this collab episode with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think it's been about 2 weeks since you last dropped an episode. It's been about 1 week since I've last dropped an episode. But yeah, I mean, 2 weeks for you to go without an episode. I mean, I definitely felt like there was a void there, because you are someone that has been so consistent with dropping episodes. I don't think you've ever taken episodes off, even when you've gone on vacation. You always, pre-recorded an episode to make sure that you had those, weekly or multi times a week drops. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, so just being consistent, right? That's what I like. I like to be consistent. I like people to know it's going to be there. I apologize for not dropping any episodes. Most people know I posted on Instagram that we had a death in the family. So my mom had passed away a little over a week ago. So it was a tough time for me, for the family. The family's from Canada, so we were, getting people, giving people time to travel to get here for a funeral, things like that. So it was nice to be able to spend time with family. Unfortunately, it was, not for a great reason, but I definitely took some time off, and really from the hobby too, So, my mom had been sick, this, she'd been sick, for about 3 weeks before she passed. So I really kind of stepped away and really, concentrated all my time with her and family and kind of quarterbacking everything. So yeah, it was one of those days where it was the first day where I probably should have been just taking it easy and relaxing, but we got together, right? We did our thing. We went and caught a show today, and just a lot of talking, and I'm glad to be able to do this collab episode, jumping back in after almost a month out of the hobby, but 2 weeks out from podcasting.
Yeah, and I definitely want to say I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sure I echo the voice of most of your listeners for sure, and most people that know you in general in this hobby. And it sucks, man. It sucks losing a family member, and especially someone as close and as important as a parent.
Yeah.
And and you and I, we spent the entire time down to the show today, which was about an hour. We spent the entire time just talking, and and you told me, a lot about what the last month has really been like for you. And it was just a strange similarity to what I had when I lost my father 10 years ago, just like it really almost can mirror what, kind of what the circumstances were just surrounding everything. And, just not easy, man. And, for a few years there wasn't a day that passed where I did not think of my dad. And I guess for me it's gotten a bit easier as time has gone on, but still, though a week will go by and I'll be like, wow, I haven't thought about my dad in a week. And a lot of times things happen in my life, and the first thing I think of is, man, I wonder what my dad would say. This is something that I would call my dad about, especially when it comes to sports, especially when it comes to the New York Yankees, and just life in general, and but different circumstances, and your mom was able to see you just become an incredible man. She was able to have some incredible grandchildren, and but still, I would imagine it doesn't lessen the pain, especially with it being so fresh.
No, no, not at all. And like I kind of took care of my mom too. I watched over her, everything she needed, I was there for, helped take care of it. So yeah, it's definitely it's going to be a little different for me too, and I find myself like I'm thinking of the days and certain things I will do, and even during the time of planning a funeral and things like that, I'm just thinking, oh, I should be doing this or call her or whatever. Yeah, so it's definitely going to take some time. It's definitely going to take some time.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, and I know that your partner's been just incredible, and she's an amazing person, and
Yeah.
between your children and her children, I know that you have quite a big support network there,
Yeah.
on a personal level in home. So that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Thankful, very thankful for them, for everyone around me. Very good support system, and I couldn't ask for better people around me in my life, And we talk about this, right? We've talked about this since the day we became friends, right? The people you surround yourself with are as important as anything else. I mean, it says a lot about you and who you are. And I have an incredible support system, and probably could not have gotten through as well as I did this last month without my support system.
Yeah. And it's one of these things where it's like most of us, or whether if we're consuming content, or people are consuming our content, or we know people from shows or even from the Wolfpack and stuff, right? It's like we know each other through the hobby lens, and very coincidentally, right before you and I started recording, I saw a post by Sean Victory Investments, and he did a couple story posts today, and he was just showing some of the work that he had done around his house, around his property, and he took a picture of his daughter next to a bunch of split wood, and he said, "My daughter and I splitting wood and not talking about sports cards. As much as I love the hobby, it actually takes low precedence in my life comparatively. A lot more important things to spend time doing." And I could not have said that any better. I mean, as much as I love the hobby, it's like I love the friendships that I've built because of the hobby, through the hobby, like with you, even much more than the cardboard itself,
Mhm.
and when I think about it, I think about my family, I think about friends, I think about my career, I think about my responsibilities. Really, the hobby is not number one, number two, or even number three in my life. I love cards, and I think, and I know you do too, and I think the content that we put out absolutely reflects and echoes that. But at the end of the day, it's just a hobby for 99% of us.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I struggled a little bit too, right? When all this was going on, I still put a couple episodes out, because I felt like I wanted to be consistent, and I wanted to do that. But then it came to a point where I just had to step back, right? And then I put it out there, and so many people reached out to me. So many people. I was so thankful. People reaching out, man, just sorry for your loss and everything else. It was, it was good. I knew people understood at that point, and a lot of people who reached out to me, it was family first, and fam just so much about family, and it's true. And sometimes when we list things out, like you were just saying, one, two, three, four, the importance of things, you know at the end of the day, it's still just a hobby, but we have all these hobby friends, and it's a culture, right? It's our life. It's and even though, like, you go through stuff and you spend this time with your family, you still have the hobby people, that are here, and they're here waiting, for you to come back and still be part of it, which is really kind of cool.
Yeah, and I could remember over the last couple of weeks. First of all, I definitely, I think, I'm not going to say I made that conscious decision, but I can remember so many times being like, I think I'm going to reach out to Ken again today. I'm going to reach out to Ken, and I was like, I think I want to kind of give him that space. Not saying you can't make that call yourself, but like almost like check out of the hobby kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so So even though you and I were in pretty regular contact, I could remember saying to you, like, knowing what you were going through before your mom passed, and I said, "You're going to drop an episode. You don't have to drop an episode. Just don't feel like you got to put out an episode." And you were, and I think part of it was like, like you said, you want to maintain that consistency, but in a way, sometimes we can just feel so, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'll speak for myself. In my personal life, sometimes I can feel so run down or so much pressure from all my personal stuff that the hobby actually is an escape for me, which is really what it is, right? So I look forward to putting out episodes because I just want to take an hour. I want to check out for an hour of my life. And so I wasn't sure if maybe that's kind of how you were feeling too, like, no, I need a little bit of balance here. But at the end of the day, I know your listeners missed you, dropping content regularly, and I did too, because you are, on days you drop, you are the first show I listen to every single week.
Man, I appreciate that. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Before we move on, and I just want to say, yeah, having this part of the hobby, being able to, you're right, at the end of doing a lot of stuff, spending like a whole day at the hospital and things like that, coming home and just being able to come in here and just talk cards, or even pull out cards, or drop a episode in the hobby. It was definitely a nice escape. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So moving on and jumping into cards, so you and I were talking during the week, and you said, listen, like, I have family up, they're all leaving Saturday night, and I want to go to the big Stanford show, right? You wanted to go to the big Stanford show here in Connecticut, and I said, absolutely, man, let's do it. So that's what we did, right? You and I, we both connected and made sure that we were both gonna head down there. So in terms of the show today, because I think the show, we won't spend too much time on the show. I know we want to talk about overall, like, where you were at hobby wise, where I'm at hobby wise, where I think it seems like friends of ours are also at. It's kind of like this, downshifting a bit, right? Downshifting a bit in the hobby, and kind of maybe, I don't know about pumping the brakes, but it seems like there's just not as much going on. So I'm curious if where you feel like that's coming from, because it sounds like you've identified with that as well, right? Like, even your personal stuff aside, it feels like things have you've kind of pumped the brakes a little bit. So tell me a little bit about, like, where you're at right now, and why you think you personally have gotten to that point.
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this. I think a lot of what happens this time of year um, is a number of things. One, real football. Football season has showed up, so we get involved in that. A lot of us are involved in fantasy football. It's the end of summer. People talk about the national hangover, right? But it's the end of summer. We're rolling we're into the fall now. The holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, that's not that far away. And I think it's just that stretch in the hobby. And I think we've noticed this over the last couple of years, that things just kind of slow down in all aspects. Like we'll see it, with people online, we'll see it at shows, we'll see it. And I'm not saying that, the shows are dead or anything like that. I just think that people tend to slow down a little bit this time of year because there's a lot more things going on. There's the same amount of time, but now we're filling that time with more things, around us. And one of the things I talked to you about, right, was just content. Like, I consume content from February, all the way to July, right? I'm consuming just all, hobby content. But then coming into August, I start to listen to content with, as well, I should say, as well, adding on for content with fantasy football, right? So I need to start getting my information together before we're getting into drafts and things like that, and throughout the season. So now my content is doubled. Not only am I listening to hobby stuff, and I'm listening to fantasy stuff. And then on the weekend, what are we doing, right? We're watching football all day Sunday. Both of us said, we need to get home. We need to jump on the couch, right? We want to watch some football. We were hurrying home from a show. So
Yeah, and I think I would echo that, and I know I've touched on a little bit on my show, but I know for me, the lead up to the national is crazy, right? Because the national is only 1 week, but I think people, I'll speak for myself, I really start gearing up. I start warming up for the national probably once May hits, right? Like, so once May 1st, you turn the calendar page, boom, it's May. I'm gearing up for the national, and especially this last year with us, having our event there and stuff like that. I think there's a lot that goes into that, right? And the build up to that is insane. And I think after that, right, I come home, I'm definitely still on that high. I'm still on that high, like, oh my God, that was incredible. There's so much, like, the national recap content to make, and you can really talk about the national for like a good 2 to 4 weeks. I feel like people just really want to consume that stuff. Then that kind of switches right into, like you're saying, fall,
Hmm.
right? Fall, kids going back to school, real NFL, fantasy football. And I'd be lying if I said, like, I, I think I look back last year, and I think last year, right around September, I kind of, I don't want to say took a step back, but I could feel myself downshifting a bit, just kind of slowing down the engine a little bit. And whether if it's the national hangover, because I don't consume uh fantasy content like you're saying. I know you were telling me earlier today how you actually use up a lot of your content consumption time actually just listening to fantasy talk because you take fantasy so seriously. There's a lot of people out there that do that as well. And as we know, there's only so many hours in the day. We only have so many hours to consume content. So I think all of that kind of plays a role, not to mention the holidays coming up, not to mention people starting to look forward to the money they're spending on Halloween costumes, the money they're spending on Black Friday and Thanksgiving, the money they're spending on Christmas and New Year's. And I think after the holidays, so for me, I do feel like there's this 3 to 4 month lull, lull, right, in the hobby. And I could be wrong, and I've had people really get upset with me before, because last year I called this out too, right around this time, and I've had show promoters like get pissed off at me for saying it. I've had card shop owners say it. I've had flippers say it, and kind of be like, I don't know what you're talking about. The hobby's alive and well, kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm kind of calling it how I see it. I'm not saying it's the truth. It's my truth, though. This is how I see it. This is how I feel. This is how I'm participating. And you got to figure, if we have our engines rev 12 months out of the year, that's really what happens, with burn. You could really burn out from that. So I think it makes sense to take your foot off the gas a little bit, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and people can get on you, but how you're saying it, and how I'm hearing what you're saying too, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is not that oh, the hobby is slowing down or anything like that. It's just that people have more things to do, right? I mean, there's just this time of year, there's just a lot to do, between, when the kids go back to school, when September hits and the end of the year, there's so much going on with sports. There's so much going on with holidays and things like that. And I know, when we started setting up three years ago now, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the December shows were the ones that were like crazy shows, like absolutely crazy shows. It was October, late October, November and December. Those shows were crazy, and then they would slow down and pick back up and slow down. Like throughout the year, it kind of goes up and down, just depending on how many people are participating and going out to all these things. But when we show up to the shows, I mean, we have people there. It's not like there's nobody there. The shows I think the shows are well traveled. I don't know, like I didn't set up this weekend, so I couldn't say like sales were great or sales were not great. But I think that for the most part, the shows are as well traveled as they could be around here.
Yeah. And so talking about shows, and we can get into a little bit about today's show that we went to. So we went to it was Stamford, Connecticut. It was a new show. I forget the exact name, exactly what they were calling the show.
The
Northeast Sports Card Convention, maybe something like that. So yeah, if you just Google Stamford with an M, not an N. So we go there and we get there an hour after the doors open. Doors open at 9. We get there right around 10. Right, we walk in at 10. A lot of tables. I think there were supposed to be 300 tables there. So 300 tables is a pretty big size show, right? And this is a big, massive hotel. So the entire lobby area, conference rooms, there's tables everywhere. And when I say that the show at 10 o'clock, an hour after the doors open, were dead, I feel like the show was absolutely dead when we got there. And I think that's the first thing I said to you. First thing I commented, I said, there's no one here.
Yep.
And how much were tables? Were they 300?
350.
350 for 2 days. 350 for 2 days. And listen, what I want to say is this, okay? I end up pissing off a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but I've pissed off my share of show promoters over the years by talking about the way that I see shows. And what I'll say is I never want to talk negatively about a show experience, because I actually had a phenomenal show experience today, as we'll talk, but I have to keep it real. I don't ever want to come on and talk about how slow a show was, because with that, to me, a show's walking traffic and the success of a show, I think, is or the failure of a show is a good indication of the market. Right. So in a good indication of the market, then that transfers over to content. Right. So like I want to have really good content with a lot of action, and I want to be able to report that everything's phenomenal. And I want to have more people at shows. I want to have more people in the hobby. I want to have more people consuming content, like all of that stuff. So I hope that I don't say anything that will truly upset random show promoters, but when we got there, the show was dead.
Yeah.
There was no one there.
Yeah.
I mean, for 300 tables, there was maybe, I don't know, from what I saw, maybe 50 to 75 people there. And that means there were more dealers than people.
Yeah, 100%. And we see that a lot, especially on Sundays.
But it was a Sunday show. You're right. It was a Sunday show.
I don't know why, and I know it's destination and things like that. I don't know why people push to charge you more money on tables and then have Sunday shows when nobody wants it. Everyone I know is like, they buy a table and then they're like, anybody want to buy my Sunday table? Because nobody wants to go back on Sunday. It would be easier just to say, let's just do it on Saturday and call it a day, right? And like, everybody's happy. They go there for one day. Everybody comes in. I mean, I talk, I know a lot of the dealers. I'm always setting up. Talked to a ton of dealers today.
It's gotten to the point, more dealers than me. More dealers than me.
Yeah. And I asked them, like, they tell me the truth. How's the show? And they tell me, look, yesterday, I mean, it started out slow. Yesterday being Saturday, it started out slow. There was probably a 3 or 4 hour window in the afternoon that I got really busy. And if you made sales in that window, you had a great day. You'll say yesterday was a positive day, because there were a number of people that said, they got busy yesterday, but I didn't have any sales. So this has just been horrific for me. No sales yesterday or today. Where some people said, I made all my money in 3 or 4 hours yesterday and I was happy to do it. But we know today that, people were packing up early. I mean, we left at 12:30 and people were already packing up and leaving then. There was there probably wasn't, I mean, I didn't see any big sales. I want to say that going there, I knew a card that I wanted to buy was there. And
I had a big sale. So
Yep.
I don't, and I don't want to cut you off, guys. I want you to finish, but I don't want to say we have no idea if there were big sales or not. I mean, you might have a better idea. I know that I probably in passing, talked to 25 dealers and just been like, hey, how's the weekend for you? Because I want to know, right? I know I'm going to be going and doing a podcast. I want to know. There wasn't a single dealer out of 25 that I talked to, and I'm guessing on the number 25, could be a couple more, could be a couple less. There wasn't a single dealer that said, I had a great show. Every single one of them gave me the look of dread. And like you said, I don't think it had anything to do with football being on today. We saw dealers packing up at 11 a.m. when the doors opened at 9.
Yeah.
11 a.m.
Yeah.
11 noon. There wasn't a single dealer that was like, this was a great show.
Mm.
And it could be because it was a new show. That could be part of it. And I didn't hear 3 to 4 hour span that was awesome yesterday. I heard there was a nice window where, you know, it was decent.
Yeah.
But even still, you know, I didn't talk to a single dealer that was like, oh, I would do it again in a heartbeat. Yeah, good show.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people felt too, and this is what I heard. You know, we just did East Coast National at the Westchester County Center, right? We just did that in August, which wasn't that far away from where this was right here. And I think, and that was very busy. And I think a lot of people felt that this being that close, that it was going to draw the same type of attention there. So a lot of the dealers were very excited, bought into the tables, got down there. And I just don't think it had the draw, from what we saw, I don't think it had the draw of what the draw was to that East Coast National show back in August.
And one of the dealers commented to us too. They said, "Listen, it's no fault to the promoter because the promoter's been, right. You were standing right there. He said the promoter's been busting his ass.
Yep, 100%.
Trying to do this thing. And that's when I commented to you, because you and I have talked multiple times about like, should we do a show? Should we try to do a show? Should we throw our hat in the ring, kind of thing? And I just said to you, I said, this is why we should not do a show, because I would feel terrible and powerless.
Yeah.
You know that feeling like when your kids are sick and you will do anything you can to take that pain away. It's just like this, the ultimate feeling of powerlessness.
Yep.
I could imagine that for a show promoter to put everything you can into trying to build up a big show. 300 tables.
Yeah.
And for it to look like the way it did today, we weren't there on Saturday. But we heard it wasn't great on Saturday. Well, if it wasn't great on Saturday, then I don't even want to know, because today, very slow. Now,
and one of the downfalls too is, and I'm just going to throw out there before you can keep going, is, you know, a lot of these guys, like for me, if I'm going to drive down there, I'm going to stay overnight, right? So if it's a 2-day show, when, you know, Saturday, Sunday, and you stay overnight, that's added expenses onto a show too, that, you know, you really hope that it's really worth, you know, that show, and Sunday is going to be worth it to, you know, cover a lot of those hotel and meals and those expenses too. So those are things that I talk about setting up all the time, not even just this show, any show, is when you're buying into a 2-day show, you really need to hope that you're covering, you know, those expenses too.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'll say is, so I'm making my rounds, right? So you and I stayed together for probably the first, what, 75 tables, maybe 100 tables, probably like the first third, right? Mm-hmm. You and I stayed together, and that's hard to do when you're walking a show with someone, because you and I, we buy, sell, and collect totally different stuff. I mean, we don't have one similar card in our cases, right? So what draws your attention isn't going to draw mine. What draws my attention, you're probably going to keep walking past. So eventually you and I just end up splitting off. And as I'm walking, I stop and see this. I see this kid, never seen him before. I say kid, he's probably like 25, 30 years old. And I look in his case. He doesn't have a ton in his case, but he's got some decent stuff. I see his Babe Ruth cut auto. And I'm like, wow, that's unbelievable. He was asking $8,500 for it. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Okay, that's a beautiful cut auto. Can't afford that. I look over and I see this Wilt Chamberlain cut auto as well. PSA graded and everything like that. I ask him for his price. He tells me his price. So I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm not as used to being on this side of the table. You know, I realize that when I am walking a show, really the cards are in the other person's hands, right? They kind of have, and I get that, and I have no problem doing it. I have no problem with not getting a phenomenal deal because I know, you know, they drove here, they took the expenses, $300. They might have stayed overnight. I know there's a lot of expenses that go into setting up, you know, and so he gives me his price, and I'm like, I was just gonna walk away, and I said, "Are you?" There was a kid right next to me, and he asked him, "Hey, are you interested in trades?" And the kid goes, "Yeah, I'm interested in trades." And he's like, "Nah, I'm all set with that, but thank you." So I go, "Okay, he's interested in trades." I go, "Would you be open to some trades?" He's like, "Sure." He looks at my box. He's like, "Wow, you got some good stuff." Blah blah blah. Took out a couple cards there. He grabbed two cards of mine that have been, I guess you can say, stale. Right, like they're cards I've owned for well over a year. I feel no emotional attachment to them. They're great cards. They were both flawless patches, both game used. One was an auto, one was just a flawless patch. And he's like, "How about these two cards plus $50 on top for the Wilt Chamberlain?" I said, "Deal." So I ended up walking away with this Wilt Chamberlain cut auto PSA authenticated. It looks like it looks like he wrote peace and then Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah.
So, and this
Cool.
is an oversized slab. So this slab is like something that would fit like probably like a 5x7 card in here, maybe, or 4x6 actually. This is a 4x6 size. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty big cut. And then as I'm about to walk away, he's like complimenting my cards. I'm complimenting his, and I'm like, "Oh, what do you got on that cut signature?" And he's like, "Oh, I got this." And I'm like, "Huh." I go, "Okay, well, would you be interested in trading for that too?" He's like, "Yeah, let me open up your case again." So I ended up making another deal and got this Muhammad Ali cut auto. Now look how this is the same size slab, but look at the difference in signatures.
Yeah.
So Muhammad Ali right there. So I got both PSA authenticated and slabbed Muhammad Ali and Wilt Chamberlain. I am feeling really good about these. I was like, whew, I did not have that on my bingo card today.
Yeah.
Showing up at the show and getting a Wilt Chamberlain and Muhammad Ali cut auto.
That is one of the best things about this hobby. When you go show up to a show and you're like, even when you're leaving, you're like, "Oh, should I put this in? Should I take this? Should I not take that? Should I bring something with me?" And you kind of go, you show up to a show, and all of a sudden you get some unbelievable like this. It's a cut auto or something you're really looking for pops up. And then the whole way home, you're like, "Man, I'm glad I went there today." You know, like who'd have ever thought that was going to happen today? You know?
And you know what? I don't think I would have gone to this show if it wasn't for you. Right? I'm still going to shows. I'm still a regular. But here's the thing, like this is where the participation is required really comes into play because this was a show I wasn't planning on going to. And I had talked last month on an episode about a show I wasn't planning on going to. And at that show, as I'm talking, I'm also reaching. At that show, I ended up walking in and randomly picking up this 1930s Babe Ruth type 1 photo. So you never know what you're going to get by going to a show. So when I say participation is required, this is a lesson that I'm continuing to learn on a daily basis in this hobby. It's continuing to be reinforced to me.
Well, I know too, going to some of these shows now, I'm very specific, right, about what I collect. And like people will call me all the time, you know, like or send me pictures of, you know, Trinity Rodman stuff. And even when I'm at a show like today, I get a guy who'll call me who is in one row behind me being like, "This guy's got women's soccer here. You need to get over here quick." You know, so you know, you're out finding it. You have to dig around. Me, it's like I've got all my people out there. You know, I got all these eyes, you know, everywhere looking. And the card I picked up today, I knew this card was in Portland. The same promoter did this show in Portland back in September, and somebody that I know sent me a picture from there saying, "Hey, he's got this card, I said, well, give him my information, tell him to contact me, and I can do a deal online with him. And he never did contact me. And the person I knew said, I messaged him and said, is he going to be at the show this weekend? And he said, yeah, he's going to be there. And I said, good. So going there, I knew there's a good chance this card was still available and there. And this is a Pop 2 card, but it's a Trinity Rodman. It's the very first relic cards that she had. And this was a PSA 10. And these are numbered. This one's numbered 79 to 100, but these are numbered to 100. But this is,
wow.
I don't know if you can see that, but this is just an unbelievable card to get. If you look behind me, I have a similar one, which is numbered to 10 with right there with a better patch on it. But I mean, this is PSA 10. You know how hard it is to get these things to gem. So when I knew it was there, and I went and I was trying to play it cool, and somebody else I know was calling me from 2 tables away saying, you got to come check out this Rodman. And I'm like, shh, okay, shush. I want to go make a deal for it. I don't want to seem too eager.
Yeah.
But I was happy. I think we both went home.
No, it's awesome, man. Today. Yeah, and I think to talk about the importance of relationships in the hobby, right? So I'm walking around and we bump into our buddy Laz, right? Laz and Tyler from New Jersey. Laz is one of the best show promoters on the East Coast, and he also has his store, Pop Century Collectibles. We hosted a trade night there, right? So I go up to their table, and we're just kind of joking around, talking, catching up, because these are guys we've gotten to know now for a few years, and when we see them, it's like, it's like you give them a handshake, but you pull each other in and give them a hug too. It's like, dude, what's up? You kind of embrace for a second. How you doing, man? So I'm standing there, and we're just kind of talking, and one of them says, Rob, listen, sell me some stuff, man. I want to buy, sell me some stuff. And I'm like, all right, well, yeah, let me see. So I open, and let me just say this.
I say no to that.
I know, right? And let me say this. And if I didn't have a relationship with them, they probably wouldn't have just been blunt like that and come right out and said that. And I wouldn't have stood there talking with them either. I would have just walked by, glanced in their case, and kept walking. So I wasn't even planning on bringing any cards today. I wasn't planning on bringing anything. So none of these things I acquired, I likely would have gotten. I would have paid cash for, right? I would have just kind of kept walking. These deals kind of happen. I think that's why when I go to a show, when I go anywhere, you want to bring your stuff with you. You want to bring your cards with you. But the thing is too, is like, sometimes I can get in my head about my collection or my cards that I want to move. Sometimes, I can feel like insecure. And I know you and I have had this conversation, like when we hosted the trade night up in New Jersey over the summer before the national. You had all the hottest NFL RPAs, select XRCs, all this stuff, and everyone's coming over to your case, and people like see my vintage or like my really rare and scarce like stuff that like you just don't see every day, and people flip through a couple cards and be like, how you doing, Rob? Love the show. And then they just keep walking, and I'm like, man, like, you kind of almost feel like you're being rejected. So part of me was like, I don't know if I want to bring my cards today. I don't know if I want to bring my stuff, because it's like, in a way, like I almost feel like I'm like pimping myself out by like, okay, here, let me open up my case. Let me show you what I have. And I feel like I'm leaving myself open for judgment. Like if my cards don't measure up to what the dealer thinks, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is me being vulnerable saying this, but it's true. And I can't be the only one that feels that way. Right. So I open up my case, to Laz and Tyler, and they start flipping through, and they're like, oh, okay. We like this. And before you know it, I mean, there was no negotiating. There was no like reading each other. Like, should I go high? Should he go low? Like, kind of thing. It was like, and Laz and Tyler even commented, like, this is why it's so nice to just do deals with people that, it's like we weren't trying to hit each other over the head with it. We figured out a negotiating system very quickly. Like at first he's like, what number do you have on this? And in my head at first I was telling him what the most recent comp was, but in his head he was listening for what number could you give this to me for. So after about 2 or 3 minutes of talking, we're like, okay, hold on. So when you're asking me the number, do you want to know what my lowest number is or what the most recent comp is? So then we can negotiate. He's like, no, just tell me your number. So we just kind of started doing it like that. And before you know it, boom, 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 he's got a stack of my cards and I have 6,500 cash. Like I wasn't even planning on going there and selling anything. But I go there, and before you know it, I have a bunch of cash in my hand, and I'm like, okay, this is cool because part of me is like, I loved those cards. There's a reason why I bought those cards. I don't buy cards to flip anymore. I buy cards because they do something to me. I buy cards because I feel like they look really good in my collection. However, with certain cards, and there were certain cards where he's like, listen, this is what I could do this on. I'm like, no, I'll keep that. I'm going to keep that. I think I'm going to keep that kind of thing. And then some I'm like, that's not available. That's not available kind of thing. But there's something about being liquid and being, I don't want to say cash heavy because I hate when people post that on like Instagram or Twitter. Cash heavy, buying, what is it? What do they say?
Buying strong.
Like I don't want to be that guy that's like, I'm cash heavy, but there's something to be said for being liquid. And you and I were talking on the way home, and you were saying that you're extremely liquid right now because you don't have that many cards as far as inventory because you never really re-upped. You never bought much after the National, right? So you sold a lot of your stuff in National. So you're sitting on like a pile of cash right now, just wondering what your next move is going to be.
Yeah, well, I didn't re-up in football, but I re-upped with hockey. I probably have a case full of hockey right now that I've just been buying, since, late July, August, September, just buying hockey, waiting for that season to start. I'm doing a show in November, so I'm sure I'm going to put that case full of hockey out there, but I never really went back and bought, replenished football. That I just kind of waited to see what would happen with the football. And interestingly enough, I showed up today. I was going through, I told you I was going through like stuff to put in, and I ended up bringing a small case with me because I really don't have that much inventory to put out there. So I was hoping like I was going to go do some shopping today type of thing. But I brought like 4, what did I have? Like 10, 11 football cards, right? So I had 4, graded cards off, each one under $100. I had a couple maybe in the $300-400 range. Then I have 4 higher end, 2,000, 3,000, 3,500, like that type of thing. And it's interesting, we just talked about that word, buying strong. People are saying, we're buying strong, but then you pull out a couple of times. I pulled out some higher end cards like a Josh Allen RPA and stuff, and that's too much. That can't jump into that right now. Don't want to. I had a couple of Mahomes cards. Oh, those are beautiful. But yeah. And we had a conversation about this. It's like it's very funny that there's certain price points on certain players and on certain cards. No matter if people say they're buying strong, are they buying these types of cards? Are they not? Because I could sit here and I've gotten a lot of flack, a lot of comments coming back on mine when I'm talking about certain cards. People are like, well, I would buy those cards if the price was this or the price was that. And I 100% believe them. But when you go to a show like this and there's 300 tables and you're going around and people are very standoffish about buying any higher end, I say higher end, they're not higher end. What are they? Mid end? They're, a couple $2,000, $2,500, $2,800. Like cards like that, people are very standoffish from buying, or they'll say, I'm buying strong, but if this car is 2,500, man, probably the best I could do is 1,800 or 1,700, something like that. So it's an interesting, it's interesting when you show up to some of these shows and you've got a guy like Laz, right? And you just mentioned Laz, and Laz, I know because I've dealt with Laz. Laz is a guy who says, I pay strong, and he will pay strong. And he knows exactly what cards he wants. He's not just buying any card that shows up at his table. There's specific cards that fall within a category for him. And I think there's a lot of people like that. But then I think there's a lot of people that are, people like myself, right? That are very judgmental, very picky. I may buy this one, but I don't want that one. I may buy this or I may not buy that. And I'm not sure if people everyone that's buying at a show is really prepared to buy at a show.
Yeah, and I have so much to say there, man. So the whole conversation that you and I had on the ride home, right? So a guy says to you, another dealer overheard you talking about a Josh Allen RPA that you have, right? It's a lower one, right? It's like sticker auto. It's not a
Yep.
high end brand, but still, it's like a 25 $3,000 card, right? 2,500 3K. And he's like, oh, I'd be interested in that. He said to you, and he said, I don't care how much it is, as long as I can make money off it, right? Yeah, stop by my table. So you go over there and you pull it out, and he goes, I'm not really looking to spend that much. And it was like, and you're kind of like, what is going on? And so what happened to me today, I can count on one hand the amount of times I've ever gotten rude or taken a tone with someone on the show for many reasons. One, I try not to let any kind of interaction in my mood. I try not to, I never want to be that guy that's a jerk, because I could be wrong too, right? And I don't want to look back and be like, you were the wrong there. Also having the show, having the podcast, like I don't want to be a jerk, like in public, right? So we get to the show, and this is where we actually end up splitting off, because the guy goes, oh, what do you got? One of the dealers, oh, what do you got? And I said, why are you buying? And he's like, yeah. I said, I have some vintage, I have some pretty unique stuff. He's like, I'd love to see what you have. So I open up my case. He starts going through my stuff. Now, everyone that's set up around him, so other dealers are all now starting to like circle over. Everyone's kind of starting to dig through my cards, which is kind of uncomfortable. It's kind of like, it's a little uncomfortable, but I could have said something, and I'm not complaining about that. I could have been like, whoa, guys, just one at a time. Like, I could have said that, but I didn't. But so now this guy that was like, yeah, I'm buying, let me see what you got. Now he's making stacks. He's taken out, I have a 4-row huge Zion case. He took out every single card. Now he's making like 8 piles here, right? Now he's still dealing with customers. But when I say dealing with customers, I mean like he's selling a $20 card here. He's selling a $30 card there. It's really just like 2 customers, but he's really taking his time. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I know I'm not special here. I'm not saying that I deserve his full attention. He should just ignore his customers. However, he pulled out 4 cards of mine that totaled about 20K. 20K. Okay. Then he pulled out another 4 cards of mine that were like $30 cards. So there's about 8 cards in total. 4 of them total 20K. 4 of them total $100. So, okay. So he's got 8 cards. So he's like, okay, just wait. Give me 1 sec. He says to me, holds up one finger. Give me 1 sec. I want to sit. I got to deal with my customers too, but don't hang out. So at this point, I'm there about 30, 40 minutes waiting for this guy. 30 or 40 minutes. Now, he's slowly asking, like, okay, what number do you have on this? What number do you have on that? And I'm telling him, like, hey, the last comp was this. This is where I want to be at, blah, blah, blah. He's like, okay, that all sounds good. Okay. Now 30, 40 minutes has gone by. And he's like, okay, now let's do this. Okay. So he pulls out his notepad, he pulls out his pen, and he pulls out this one of the $25 or $30 cards of mine. It's a John Elway rookie. It's a PSA 7. Last comp was $30. I think I had 55 price tag on it, but I mean, that's just what I would put it in as the case. And who knows, maybe the comp before that was 45, but this last one was 30. So he's like, oh, well, this is, last comp on this was 30. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I could be at that comp, I could do that. He's like, well, I can't be at, I can't do that comp, because you have to understand when you're sitting on this side of I said, listen, I get it. Totally get it. Like, we'll make it work. Don't worry about it. So then he starts looking at the second $30 card, and he's like, oh, he starts looking at comps. So this is about 45 minutes now. And I go, listen, and in my head, I'm like, I'm about to walk away from this. So I'm just going to put it out straight to him. I go, listen, what are we doing here? I said, you have about 20K in my high-end cards right there. I could give a crap less about those 4 cards you're looking at right now. I don't know. Can you tell me why you're starting with the $30 cards? Because those, I don't care. I'll throw those in for free if we make a deal on these bigger cards. I said this to him. I go, I don't know what we're doing here. He's like, whoa, I'm just trying. I'm like, listen, if you want to work on something, let's start talking some numbers so we at least know. He's like, well, I'm not trying to waste your time. I take a deep breath. I'm like, listen, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what your plan is, but he's like, well, I'm not trying to take your time here, because I know you probably want to go walk the room too, but I am maybe interested in this. So I tell that story to say this because I probably wouldn't have even told this story. I said, you know what? I was very respectful. I said, I'm going to take my cards. I'm going to walk away. I appreciate your time. Thank you. I spent 40 minutes there as this guy just dilly-dallied. And all he was trying to do was tell me about how he's been doing this for years, how he's did this, how he's in that. And I'm like, I wouldn't have told this story, but when you started talking about the guy that was like, oh, I'll buy anything. Josh Allen RPA, I'll buy anything as long as there's enough, if it financially makes sense for me. And then you pulled it out and he's like, oh, it's a little too much for me. Like, that was a lower end Josh Allen RPA you have. No offense to you or that card. So I feel like it's not only customers, it's not only people that walk shows that like to window shop. I truly feel like there are dealers that like to window shop. There are dealers that I've set up more than enough times to know that if someone walked in with a $10,000 card, and Tyler, Laz's partner, said this to me once, so he said this exact quote to me. He said, if someone walked in right now with a $10,000 card, and he looked around the room, there was at least 100 dealers in the room. He goes, how many dealers right now do you think would actually be able to buy that card? He said, what, 5%? 5% of the people in here could buy that card. So that's always stuck with me, that most dealers, I think, go to a show, maybe 500, maybe 1,000 tops in their pocket. If that, some dealers go there with nothing. Some dealers go there and they're like, I better sell some cards today.
Yeah.
And I think that some dealers like to window shop. I think it gives some dealers a feeling of power sitting on that side of the table. And it's almost like in their head, they're like, there's no way I'm buying that card. I don't have that money to buy that card. But you know what? I like looking at these cards, and I like this guy. I like this customer thinking I'm interested in those cards. So I'm going to sit here and waste his time. I think that some dealers do get off on that. And that was really the vibe I was getting from this guy, because a half hour later, I'm sitting there talking with Laz and his guy, Tyler. Within 5 minutes, they're buying $6,500 in cards from me. Neither him nor I broke a sweat. It was very casual. It was so it's like, I think within like 30 to 60 seconds, you can kind of tell if someone's serious or not. And I did not go with my gut. I was trying to be nice. And of course I wanted to see what the guy had to offer, for sure. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I was just trying to be nice to the guy. Like, I was like, hey, if this guy's interested in some stuff, I would like to move some stuff today. But I think that dealers are just as guilty of window shopping as customers.
Yeah. And you know what? Here's the thing. Anyone can be a dealer, right? All you have to do is buy the table, and now you're a dealer at a show. So, you go like myself, you go to a setup at enough of these shows, and you see, certain people who are there, peddling certain things, and other people who really want to try to buy and sell. And, there's a lot of people there that just want to buy. There's a lot of people there that just bring stuff to sell. And I think we have an expectation all the time. And maybe it's because of, we look inward of that and get that expectation, because when we set up, we're expecting that people are going to show up, with cash in their pocket and want to buy and want to sell and want to make deals and do all this stuff. But, those expectations we set may be a little high, because at the end of the day, you don't need a license. You don't need a diploma. There's nothing you need to become a dealer, right? All you have to do is pay for the table and show up, and now you're a dealer. So I think a lot of people have different ideas of what it means to be a dealer at a card show.
Yeah, absolutely. So Orlando, we got a bunch of people in the comments. Orlando just asked, Great job, Rob, on the transaction. What big cards did you move? So there was a big Mickey Mantle I moved, a big Bill Russell, a Whitey Ford, an Al Kaline, a Eric Dickerson rookie auto, a Anthony Munoz rookie auto, 2 Hulk Hogan rookie autos, and the Star Michael Jordan rookie. I had a 96 Topps reprint of that. So it was a PSA in a PSA slab, PSA 8, but it was when they re-released like 12 years later, that card. So I had that. So, and I just gave them a nice package deal on them because Laz is awesome. And, he's, when someone comes with cash, that's usually, kind of what happens. But yeah, man. So we're at 55 minutes right now. So, as we start to wrap up, man, I mean, I feel like we could have talked for like another hour. Maybe we should do part 2 on Thursday or something.
Hey, I'm all in for it.
Right?
Want to do a part 2, yeah.
So any final thoughts? Any on anything that we discussed?
No, I mean, it was, like I said, it was nice to get back in. It was nice to hit a show. And we have, coming up, and there's a lot of shows coming up. There's a lot of October and November shows coming up. So it's going to be interesting to see, if this pattern continues, which shows are bigger than others. I know, we talked about a number of times this November weekend that has 3 big shows going on, and really the only people it hurts are the dealers, right? Because now you're making people decide which shows they want to go to. So, hopefully we can correct some of that, moving forward or in the future, that we can, kind of drive everybody from one show to another and not force them to make decisions on shows, because that was something people were really mentioning today. They're mentioning to me too, like, they're asking me, when's your next show? What's the next show you're doing? And I'm doing, I have some weekend travel plans, so I won't be doing anything. I won't be setting up now as we speak right now, as this recording, until November, till the Gillette Stadium show will be the next show I'll be setting up at.
Ooh, that's gonna be a big show.
Yeah,
that's gonna be a big show. That's Card Vault, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So shout out to Chris Costa, Card Vault. I would love to touch base with you maybe on our next collab episode on I saw that Card Vault had Jason Tatum at their store. Jason Tatum was there probably signing autographs, I think doing trades and stuff. Fanatics had an event where Tom Brady, Kevin Hart, Travis Scott, and a bunch of other people were at. So I am kind of curious what, maybe some of the commercialization of the hobby does just in general. I'm curious what that does, because more people isn't always a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people out there that are doing some good work with, they've been holding Fanatics accountable, and it seems, or they've been holding Panini accountable, and it seems like they're going to be right up the keister of Fanatics as well, as far as quality control and everything else. So I think we're going to have some good talking points moving forward, my man.
Absolutely.
All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. Rob, Sports Card Therapist, Ken, Sports Card Lessons. Don't forget, take care of yourselves and your collection.
And until next time, be good to yourselves and everyone around you. Take care, Rob.
All right, Ken. Thanks, man.